Michael Schumacher, the Red Baron, the Rainmaster, the greatest of all time. He was called many things throughout his legendary F1 career, but before all of this, he was a 22-year-old man called Michael, sat in the Jordan 191, waiting to make his Formula 1 debut. But in order to tell the story fully of this debut, we have to go back a bit and talk about the Jordan team. Eddie Jordan Racing began life in the early 1980s, starting out in British Formula 3, but joined in the F1 grid in 1991, where they changed their name to Jordan Grand Prix. He was able to sign F1 veteran Andrea de Cesaris, who had worked with such teams such as Alfa Romeo, McLaren and Brabham, and had managed to get on 5 podiums in his previous 10 seasons in Formula 1. It also signed Bernard Gachot, who was entering his 3rd season in Formula 1, although he had spent the previous season failing to qualify for every race. In the first 3 races of Jordan Grand Prix's career, neither car made it to the end of the race, whether it be due to engine failures, suspension failures, or gearbox failures. But in their 5th race, they managed an incredible double points finish at the Canadian Grand Prix, with Gachot finishing 5th and de Cesaris finishing 4th. They would then go on to score points with at least 1 car in the next 5 races, where before going into the Belgian Grand Prix, the team were 5th in the constructors' standings with 13 points. But this is when the season would take a dramatic turn, and to understand why, we have to go even further back. The 10th of December 1990. Bernard Gachot was driving through London to meet up with Eddie Jordan and representatives from 7-Up. On his way, he would hit the back of a London cab. Neither car would be damaged, but the cab driver came out and went to punch Gachot, to which Gachot responded by spraying the cab driver in the face with CS gas. Gachot would be arrested and his trial was set the week before the Belgian Grand Prix. Gachot expected to be hit with a fine or a suspended sentence and then go on to Monza after the trial to test the Jordan ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix. But the judge had a different idea and sentenced him to 18 months in prison. Jordan needed a second driver now, and fast. Stefan Johansson, Derek Warwick, Damon Hill and Keke Rosberg were all discussed as a replacement by the Jordan team, but an offer from Mercedes would change their mind. Michael Schumacher had joined the Mercedes Junior Racing program in the World Sports Car Championship in 1990 whilst he was competing in Formula 3. He would drive in 3 races of the Sports Car Championship that year and would finish 2nd twice and win the final race of the year, finishing joint 4th in the Drivers' Championship, just 28.5 points off the champion despite competing in 6 less races than him. He would also compete in the 1991 season, and despite huge reliability issues which would see him retire from 5 of the 8 races he competed in, he was still able to win a race and get 2nd in another. He would also compete at Le Mans for the first and only time, finishing 5th overall driving for Mercedes. In a strange coincidence, one of the drivers who won Le Mans that year was Bernard Gachot. When the Jordan seat became available for the Belgian Grand Prix, Mercedes wanted their man in the seat and offered Jordan $150,000 to give the seat to Michael, which Jordan accepted. At this point, Michael Schumacher had never driven an F1 car before, and Eddie Jordan desperately wanted to get some testing time in before the race. Jordan would call up Silverstone, the track which was situated across the road from the Jordan factory, and tried to book the track to test Schumacher, but was told it was fully booked. The track had been booked by professional golfer Nick Faldo, who was driving his Porsche 956, which he was unable to insure on the road. Jordan would strike up a deal with Faldo, which meant they would share the track. At the end of the day, Jordan allowed Faldo to go in the F1 car. Schumacher's lap times on that day were so impressive that some engineers thought he must have been using the shorter track. Before the race at Spa, Jordan asked Schumacher, "Have you ever driven round Spa before?" And Michael replied, "Oh yes, of course I have." This was a lie, as Michael Schumacher thought if Eddie Jordan knew that he'd never driven the track before, he wouldn't get the drive. Before qualifying, Michael cycled around the track to try and learn the layout on a fold-up bike he'd brought from home. Then came qualifying, and Schumacher was able to qualify an incredible 7th place, equaling Jordan's best ever qualifying to that point, and beating teammate de Cesaris in 11th by 7/10 of a second. Then came the race. Getting an incredible start, Schumacher was able to go from 7th to 5th, getting the jump on Nelson Piquet in the Benetton and Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. He would get overtaken back by Piquet into turn 1, pushing him down to P6, but Schumacher would head up to Eau Rouge, and this is where his race would end. After a clutch failure, this meant his debut barely lasted 4 corners. But after making such a huge impression, Jordan was very excited to see what Schumacher would do for his team in the next race. But it wouldn't be that simple. Schumacher's performance had impressed the entire grid. Most of all, it impressed Flavio Briatore of Benetton, who approached him to drive for his team for the rest of the season. But surely Jordan had a contract with Michael Schumacher, right? Well, in a way. Before the race, a letter was signed by Michael Schumacher that read, "Dear Eddie, I confirm that if you enter me in the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix, I will sign the driver agreement with you prior to Monza in respect of my services in 1991, 1992, 1993, and subject to Mercedes' first option, 1994. The driver agreement will be substantially in the form of the agreement produced by you with only mutually agreed amendments. I agree that PP Sauber Limited will pay you £150,000 per race for 1991. I also understand that you require $3.5 million for both 1992 and 1993. And if I or my backers are unable to find that money, you will be entitled to retain my services in those years. Yours sincerely, Michael Schumacher." But before he signed this letter, he changed one single word. Instead of it reading, "I will sign the driver agreement," it now read, "I will sign a driver agreement." So Schumacher was under no obligation to sign with Jordan, and could sign with any team he wanted. This would eventually go to court, and the courts would rule in favour of Schumacher. Schumacher would move to Benetton for the rest of the 1991 season, teaming with 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet, who was celebrating his 200th Grand Prix at Schumacher's second Grand Prix. In that race, Schumacher would outqualify Piquet by 3/10 of a second, and would end up beating him in the race by 11 seconds. At the end of the year, Benetton would finish 4th in the Constructors' Championship, and Jordan would finish 5th. Bernard Gachot's 18-month sentence was shortened to 2 months, and he would return to F1 again, competing in 32 more races, although only scoring points in one of them. And finally, just over 1 year after his debut, Michael Schumacher would return to Spa in the Benetton and get his first ever win. And the rest is history. So there you go, there's the incredible story behind Michael Schumacher's debut race. Let me know what you think, and until next time, goodbye.